AMC presents an illuminating portrait of a legendary actor.
I think I've probably been pretty cavalier about the advice that I've gotten. I should have listened to more of it.
In his last recorded interview.
Like most and many actors, I'm very, very critical of my work, but I must admit I've made an awful lot of films. That's just how it is.
This revealing look at Anthony Perkins on Professor Richard Brown's Reflections on the Silver Screen. Coming up next on AMC.
As a youngster, you hitchhiked out to Hollywood, and you went in to do almost as a favor to do a reading, but you weren't reading for a part. You were reading the other person's lines.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the movie The Actress.
Mm-hmm.
And George Cukor saw you, and he just said, "I want that man," and that was your first part, that was your first film.
Well, that's a slightly glamorized version of it. Not to make a long story out of it, but I had played this role in Summer Stock, the role of Gene Simmons' boyfriend. I had played it in a professional company, you know, where people had to pay 75 cents or a dollar to get in and see it. So I figured if I could just go out there and tell them that would give them, they would say, "Oh, you've played the part already? Well, you've had experience, so we'll give it to you."
Sign here.
Yeah, sign here, exactly. But it didn't quite work out that way. They were interested. "Oh, yeah, really? Well, you know, leave us a picture, kid, and we'll get in touch with you." But as it turned out, they were making a test, just as more or less as you've described it, with an actress, and they said, "Oh, there, you know, there's that kid that came around last week and said he'd play the part. Why don't we ask him to do it? And that way, we don't have to get anybody from contract, which would mean maybe taking them off a picture or something like that." So I inadvertently was engaged to come in and read lines, really, for Margaret O'Brien, who was being tested for the role, and Cukor saw me there, and I figured this part was mine. They may be testing Margaret O'Brien, but I figured they were going to turn around and do a shot of me too.
But it sort of is a tribute to the power of positive thinking.
Oh, no question about it. The power of self-confidence, which I think one way or another all actors have. I love. I was watching an early film of Sidney Poitier's. He is giving his performance, the same intensity, the same skillfulness that he gives now. I mean, he was born with it. He had the confidence to go in and promote it, do it, and succeed in it. He had it in his first film.
If that's the case, and I very much believe it is, that the great actors have a persona that they create on stage, and then they work and they fine-tune it for the character. They move it a little bit in one direction or another.
Bit, exactly.
How, if I may ask, how would you define the Tony Perkins persona?
Well, it changed in 1960 with Psycho. With Psycho, suddenly I'd abandoned being the young leading man and became the slightly quirky, slightly nervous, tick-ridden juvenile. That was just one of those overnight things. And as so many reviews have said about Psycho, it was too good. The part was too well written. The performance was too well directed by Hitchcock, and I think it left a lasting impression on moviegoers who were more interested in seeing me in roles like that than in anything else.
You know, I think I must have one of those faces you just can't help believing.
Is anyone at home?
No.
Oh, there's somebody sitting up in the window.
No, there isn't.
Oh, sure, go ahead, take a look.
Oh, that must be my mother. She's an invalid. It's practically like living alone.
Oh, I see. Now, if this girl, Marion Crane, were here, you wouldn't be hiding her, would you?
No.
Not if she paid you well?
No.
Let's just say, just for the sake of argument, that she wanted you to gallantly protect her. You'd know that you were being used, that you wouldn't be made a fool of, would you?
But I'm not a fool.
Well,
and I'm not capable of being fooled, not even by a woman.
Well, this is not a slur on your manhood. I'm sorry.
Let's put it this way. She might have fooled me, but she didn't fool my mother.
When I look back, what I see is an enormous enthusiasm for you. There's this man from Paramount who said, "Well, we've invested $15 million in this kid, and we put him into 5 pictures, and it better click." And let me tell you, he said, this guy clicked.
Well, of course, the tragedy of that was all 5 pictures were lousy. He was the personal producer of 2 of them, which were absolutely indefensibly bad. It was very, very sad for this guy. The 2 films that he produced were Desire Under the Elms and The Matchmaker.
Did you know that going in? Did you look at it and say, this isn't going to work?
Well, in the case of Desire Into the Elms, which is a play about owning property and the greed and the lust for property and the security that owning property gives you, when you consider they shot it not on the Paramount backlot, but actually in a soundstage, it seemed a little inappropriate to me.
Yeah. And that was a 1958 film.
Yeah.
You were directed by Delbert Mann.
Charming guy, yeah.
It was interesting to me in terms of the whole Perkins body of work, because it was the first time, I think, that you did serious love scenes on screen. Was that rough for you to do that under the lights, under the camera? Was that a toughie?
Well, Sophia Loren, who played the girl, was so adorable and so nice, and she had such a sense of humor about herself and about all kinds of scenes that actually it wasn't that difficult. She just wasn't an uptight girl, that's all. She was so happy to be in Hollywood. She just had a big success with Boy on a Dolphin. Actually, it wasn't a big success, but for her, it was a huge success. She had a huge Paramount contract. She was just about getting ready to be married to Carlo Ponti, and she had such a good time that it was very difficult to appear in scenes with her and not enjoy it.
Even I sit here so frightened you will not come. I'm a bad woman, I lie to you. I tell you it is only because you're here, because you're young, because I'm tired of old men. It isn't true, Evelyn. It isn't true. I love you. I love you. For so long I've wanted to say that. Now I can say to you, I love you. I love you.
And I love you, Hannah. Now I can say it. I've been dying for one of you every moment since you came.
You mentioned films that were disappointing to you. Let me mention a couple of films that I don't think were disappointments to you. Certainly, the audiences loved them.
Well, okay. Well, that's important, of course. I realize I'm, like most and many actors, I'm very, very critical of my work, but I'm not impossible. When there's a scene in a film or even an entire film that it seems to still have vitality and authenticity, I think I can see that. It's just not a blanket no, but I must admit I've made an awful lot of lousy films. That's just how it is. I mean, it just worked out that way.
But you made Friendly Persuasion.
Friendly Persuasion, you'd really be churlish to find an enormous amount of fault with that. That's just one of those films which lives on. It wasn't that it was so innovatively directed. It wasn't that the story was so original. It was just one of those successful films in which I had a marvelous role. Gary Cooper was marvelously cast in the role. It was just one of those marvelous and enduring films which will always have a certain amount of interest. So I'm grateful for that film.
Do you remember the scene in this film where you are talking to your parents and you explain that you have to enlist?
That scene started about 9:30 in the morning, and by 1 o'clock, the unions at that time declared that we had to go to lunch right in the middle of the scene, just before my close-up. And Weiler came to me and he said, I'm really sorry about this. You're doing a fabulous job, and I want you to hold on to this if you possibly can. Why don't you go back to your room and sort of concentrate and reread the script. I'm very, very sorry. We'll start again in an hour. Well, I went to the commissary and had 2 cheeseburgers and a malted, and came back, sat down, and just started over again. I didn't have the self-consciousness as an actor to find that would be a difficult thing to do. So since I didn't think it was going to be difficult, it wasn't.
One reason why it might have been difficult is that for the close-up, in order for it to match the long shot or the master, you needed to replicate exactly what you had done earlier.
But youth, youth can do anything. I mean, who wrote, I just read it, youth is a time to walk around clothed in rainbows. I mean, when you're that age, nothing bothers you. Nothing bothers you. The idea of replicating a feeling or an idea, even after 2 cheeseburgers and a malted, it didn't strike me as something that was going to be, difficult and soul-searching, and how will we ever find it again? It didn't occur to me.
If thee gives all he's got to the enemy, thy friends will go hungry. What's good about that?
George. He wants to go out and fight. Give thy life.